Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the noon news from Montana's news leader.
Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us on this Wednesday. I'm Aja Goare. Our top story today, Hurricane Irma slammed into the Caribbean early this morning as a Category 5 hurricane. Irma is the most powerful storm ever measured in the Atlantic, and it's headed toward Puerto Rico and Florida. CBS's Kenneth Craig reports.
Packing 185-mile-an-hour winds, Hurricane Irma made landfall in the Caribbean early Wednesday, barreling into the island of St. Martin. The storm flooded a harbor, stranding cars. Irma is the strongest hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic. This is the view from the eye of the storm. In Puerto Rico, the island's 3.4 million residents braced for the worst. The head of the power company says parts of the island could be in the dark for weeks or even months afterward. Irma is still days away from the U.S. mainland and is now tracking more east.
The storm is bigger, faster, and stronger than Hurricane Andrew.
Mandatory evacuations are already in effect for the Florida Keys, forcing people to get in their cars and leave. Elizabeth Prado lives in the Keys. This is the first time in 51 years she's evacuating.
I've been through George, been through Andrew, been through Wilma, but I'm not staying for Irma. No, not happening.
And in Miami, residents filled up sandbags. State officials are urging residents who live in low-lying areas in Miami-Dade County to start evacuating as well, although it is not mandatory. Kenneth Craig, CBS News, Miami.
President Trump declared a state of emergency in Florida, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Here in Montana, mandatory evacuations for about 430 homes near Sealy Lake's Rice Ridge fire have been downgraded to evacuation warnings, but fire managers say there's still no relief in sight. The blaze charred thousands of new acres last night. It's now 120,000 acres. Fire managers say the Rice Ridge fire and the Reef fire grew together in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, adding acreage. Now more than 6 weeks into fighting this fire, MTN's Don Fisher shows us why it's so difficult to contain this blaze.
Greg Ponson's incident management team has tons of Northern Rocky firefighting experience, and on Tuesday, they got settled into their new temporary home near Sealy Lake. Fire Information Officer Mike Cole says the last team did a great job of keeping the fire from hitting nearby structures and also gave them a good base to build on. But the dense smoke in the air has made some parts of the fight even more challenging.
We've been unable to get our aircraft up to do any work on the fire or even to identify exactly where the fire has moved to on the east side of the fire. And we know that it's moved probably 20 miles east, maybe a little bit more than that from the original fire origin. So we know general locations, but doing a lot of recon in the south side and the southeast side of the fire today to figure out exactly where that fire is sitting.
Cole says the Rice Ridge fire grew by about 10,000 acres on Monday, but was mostly due to engulfing the Reef fire, which is burning in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. This team has also taken over the fight of the Liberty fire, which started near Arlee and is now burning about 17 miles southeast near Sealy Lake.
So we essentially have two fires here in the immediate area of Sealy Lake, and that's a big area to cover and a big area to try to figure out where our crews and our equipment can work and get the most efficient use out of them. And we're still dealing with the weather just like all the other fires in Montana.
Cole says not just this, but every crew around the state has their hands tied when it comes to resources, but they aren't giving up hope that they can keep these structures and the Sealy Lake residents safe.
So we have shortages on crews, engines, aircraft, even EMTs nationwide to fill orders that are outstanding. That every fire in the country needs resources right now to get a handle on what they're working on.
In Sealy Lake, Don Fisher, MTN News.
Thank you, Don. And meanwhile, fire officials say smoke is actually aiding firefighting efforts at the Sprague fire, which is burning 13,000 acres in west of Glacier National Park. The smoke is creating a dampening effect on the fire, resulting in stable conditions. Evacuation orders are still in effect from the south end of Lake McDonald north up the Going to the Sun Highway to Logan Pass. That includes campgrounds and 55 private homes. And the Caribou fire burning near Eureka has destroyed 10 homes and 30 outbuildings. The blaze is just over 19,000 acres. Fire growth prompted the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office to implement a pre-evacuation order for residents in the Basin Creek area. Mandatory evacuations are still in place for residents north of Tule Lake in the West Kootenai area. The fire is the #1 priority in the nation. And northwest of Lincoln, an infrared flight mapped the Alice Creek fire at nearly 22,000 acres. A mandatory evacuation order was issued this morning for about 16 homes in Elk Meadows, northeast of Lincoln. This fire has already destroyed 4 structures. Late Monday, firefighters were able to construct dozer lines and used fire to create a containment line west of Highway 200. Air tankers were called in to drop retardant to slow the fire spread along Falls Creek Ridge. And a portable water tank for helicopters is being installed to help make more frequent water drops. All evacuation orders do remain in effect. And on that note, we turn now to the weather scene with Ed McIntosh, where the story today is still the smoke.
It still is. And you talked about how the smoke was actually helping out in one case because we've got high pressure area holding the smoke close to the surface. We take a look out from Polson. We should be able to see Flathead Lake. It's out there somewhere, but with the smoky haze, you can see how poor the visibility is there. Into Missoula, we should be able to see some mountains, but again, the restrictions have been fairly consistent across the region. You can almost see a almost yellow haze across the city there, holding the temperatures down. With that light wind, there's nothing to even move the smoke around very much. And a look from Hamilton today as well, where we should be able to see a little more of Main Street, but even that is difficult. Go ahead and take a look at the forecast details coming up.
Thanks, Ed. We'll check back in. A Livingston man is accused of plotting to throw a homemade bomb into the Livingston police station. The police chief says 45-year-old Bruce Flack was arrested over the weekend and faces charges of possessing explosives. A witness told police Flack claimed he made a bomb using a Tylenol bottle and nails. Flack allegedly said he planned to throw that bomb into the police station as revenge for an earlier arrest. Police searched Flack's home and found a bottle with a fuse containing gunpowder and nails. Montana Governor Steve Bullock's campaign agrees to pay a $3,000 fine for failing to report use of his state airplane in a timely manner. The fine is part of a settlement reached last week with the Commissioner of Political Practices. The commissioner ruled earlier this year the Bullock campaign did not properly report $4,500 in expenses for use of the state airplane at 36 campaign events last year. The Bullock campaign did report the expenses on its campaign finance reports, but not always during the period in which they occurred. The fine has been paid by the Montana Democratic Party. President Trump's decision to end the DACA program means thousands of people living in Montana and Wyoming are now here illegally. That program, implemented by President Obama, provided protections for people brought to the U.S. illegally as children by their parents. Of the 800,000 people in the DACA program, Montana has one of the smallest numbers of people in the program. Only Maine and Guam had fewer recipients. Meanwhile, Wyoming has 10 times that of the Treasure State, with nearly 1,000 approved to date. To put that in perspective, California has the bulk of Dreamers, with nearly 360,000 initial or renewed applications approved. Montana has 112 pending applications, while Wyoming has more than 1,100 as of today. Government officials will adjudicate each one on a case-by-case basis. Before we get to break, 2 captured black bear cubs near Harlowton will find a new home in Helena. Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks reports the 2 cubs were seen on Saturday walking along the highway with their mother. The cubs got separated after someone chased the bears into the prairie. The cubs were then seen in town. The young cubs will be taken to the Montana Wildlife Rehabilitation Center in Helena. Straight ahead on the noon news, the storm may be over for Texans, but the road to recovery is long and expensive. Details next. But first, Ed has our weather forecast. Stay with us.
You're watching